Hey everybody, welcome to episode 11. So we're going to start this episode with a repair. So basically when I was removing the tubes on this thing, obviously I've been putting the tubes in and out, one of the things I noticed is that the cap on this Arcturus 3551 was really loose, and lo and behold, off it came. So the plan is going to be to fix that. That didn't break the seal, so we still have vacuum in the tube. So really, if you're not going to be able to see this probably, but there is a little piece of wire sticking out of there. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to gently take a little file and clean it like this. And make sure we get any tarnish off of there. And then we're going to put this tube in the socket to help hold it. And I've taken this little piece of bus wire like that, and I've put a little loop on it with some solder in it, and I've taken this cap and I've hollowed out the center. Okay, so the plan is going to be to solder this here, then we're going to take some epoxy and we're going to fill it in and we're going to slide it down, and we'll see what happens. You never know. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get this wire connected, and we're going to clean a little bit around the glass so that the epoxy holds well. So let's do that first. Let's clean around the glass a little bit with a little 90% alcohol. Like that. I never did one of these before, so I don't even know if it's going to work. I also don't believe that there's a way to test the connectivity. I did try a good tube with my meter, and apparently that top doesn't connect to one of the pins. I don't know. I'm not going to worry about it. Nothing to lose by doing this. So here's our piece of wire. Let's zoom in so you can watch this. Okay, here's our piece of wire. We're going to heat up the solder and this piece of jumper wire. Make sure this is straight. Okay. We're going to hold that for 1 second. Make sure it gets a good connection. Okay. I'm going to remove these forceps. And there we go. Now on this top, I also removed all the solder. So there was a hole in there that you could see. Now I'm not going to try to dry fit this, because if I do that, I have a risk of breaking that wire. So we're just going to go for the gusto and do a little epoxy. So let me get that mixed and we'll be right back. Okay, we have a little 5-minute epoxy here, mixed. And we're going to take a little bit on the screwdriver, and we're going to put it inside this cap right here, like so. I don't think you can see that. I'm just going to put a little bit here, so that when I push it down on that glass, there's something to grab. Okay, there we go. All right, let's get this on the top here. Again, we have nothing to lose here, guys. There we go. She's on. We've got some seepage of the epoxy, which is good. And we're just going to let that set for about 2 hours. And then we're going to come back and solder this top. Okay? So we're just going to leave that as it is, and then we'll come back and solder. Be back. Okay, while that's drying, we're going to replace this wire coming out of this coil can. I replaced it the other day and it's a little too short and I'm not happy with it, so we're going to take this cover off again and put a longer wire. I thought I had measured it correctly, but I didn't. So let me get that apart and we'll show you what it looks like inside. Okay, there's 2 screws underneath that hold this can in. We're just going to snip that off for now because we're going to redo that anyway. I'm going to lift this can up, and inside is our coil. This is a great opportunity to test it as well, which I did. And ohm it out and make sure it's good. I did that before I started working on the radio, but just to be sure. So we're going to replace this wire. I'm not going to mess with it underneath the radio because it's a very, very thin wire. So all I really did here is a piece of heat shrink, and we're going to remove that, and we're going to just put a piece of longer wire in there and we'll be good to go. So let me go do that. Be back. Okay, we've got our new wire soldered in. We've got some heat shrink around it. I made sure not to direct the heat towards the coil, and we're going to replace the can like so. So we just put this wire through the can like that, and put that can back in place. Okay, and then all we have to do now is reattach the cap on the top. So I won't do that on camera. You guys know how to do that. So let me reattach this thing on the bottom with the 2 screws, and we're good to go. Be back. One thing I do want to caution you about: this is the nut right here, and there's one right here that hold that can in place. This platform here is ceramic. Don't over tighten those nuts down. You'll crack the ceramic. All right? You don't need to make them really tight, just enough to hold it in place. Okay? So that's all connected. Now we'll do the top. Okay, mission accomplished. This is all fixed. Now I have plenty of room here. All right, let's go on to the next thing. Okay, I've let a little time pass here, and I just soldered the top of this this tube and cleaned it with alcohol, and it's rock solid now. It's not going anywhere. So we'll end up seeing if it works or not. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. So so that's a successful repair right there. All right, let's flip it underneath now. We're going to take a look on the bottom and see what's going on there. Okay, before we go into the chassis and start diving in there, I decided I'm going to rewire the speaker first. And the reason why is pretty obvious. These connections are not really very good. And the other thing is that B+ actually runs through the speaker, goes to the coil, and there's a choke here. So if this wire is not making a good connection, or if there's a break somewhere in here, the B+ is going to go crazy on this radio, and I'm not going to get any sound. So I'm going to replace all these wires. I'm going to ohm out everything again, make sure everything's good. I did it when I first got the radio, and I do know that that the speaker does work. But we're going to check that again and make sure it works. So that's going to be the plan: is to remove these wires, remount them in this socket right here, and make sure that we've got connectivity to everything. So let's get that started. Okay, back in a second. Okay, so the first thing we did was we cut the wires that go to this voice coil, and this is a 650 ohm speaker. So I've got one lead connected to the black. I'm going to connect this one here, and you'll see I've got 647. So so we're good there. That's good. So this coil is good, and we're going to go one step at a time here. And the reason why I only cut those 2 wires is I'll just now run new wires back to this plug so that I don't lose track of what's what. All right, so let's go do that. Okay, we've got all of our wiring connected on this end, and I do have a different color for every wire. Okay, so I've got green, red, white, yellow, and blue. And on the connector end, which I haven't done yet, I just have a piece of tape which marks which color it is. In order to remove these old wires, you simply just have to melt the solder, which is right here on the tip, and that wire should pull out. So we're gonna crank up the old Hakko FX 951 up to 800 degrees and see if we can get some of those wires out and start putting them in. You'll see here that I did twist them. Obviously that's for noise cancellation and hum, and I do have everything heat shrinked. Also on this end, I didn't go directly down to the transformer. I left some of the original wiring there, and I've got everything heat trimmed and tie wrapped here so that nothing gets disturbed. And before I'm done, I'll put something here just to tie this to the speaker so it doesn't get moved around. That's where we are. So let me get working on the plug. Okay, so we have our wires connected here with a restrainer clip. It's not going anywhere. These are not going to be disturbed. They're not going to move. It's nice and secure. And we've also connected the ends to the plug. Okay, and as I said, you melted the solder on the tips of these things. The wires go through, and then you simply just put some heat on there and they go back in. I've got a tie wrap right here just for some strain relief. I'm going to take a file and just clean these up a little bit just so they don't have any problem going into the port. but I've also tested the connections to make sure they're good. Let me show you what I mean by that. Let me just lower the radio here a little bit. So just to confirm it, I did put a meter on it, but I also did the battery test. So if I do this, I don't know if you can hear that. So we've got good connection. I also ohmed everything out. So we now consider this speaker to be at least usable. Now I just need to clean it, because you can see there's a whole bunch of crap on here. Alright, so that part's done. Let's move on to the next thing. You know, some of you may be saying, like, why does this guy keep saying he's going to go underneath the chassis and then he works on something else? So let me explain that. So in order for me to really know if this radio is working the way it's supposed to, I've got to have all these other things fixed, right? The speaker needs to be optimal. I need to make sure that the choke is in place and working and ohms out, and the coils. That's all got to be done and tested. So we've already accomplished that. The tubes, you know, the grid caps on the top had to be addressed and that type of thing. So, you know, I'm really basically eliminating all the things that could be causing any problem here. And this way, when I get underneath the chassis and just check things one more time, and I'm essentially going to go through a schematic with a orange highlighter, right? That's what we use on these things. And I'm going to trace every wire back and make sure it's in the right place. So I haven't done that yet, honestly. I did find one wire that was cut along the way somewhere, and that's when someone put in a replacement for that 0.1 capacitor. There was a can and there are 4 of them, and someone had replaced just one. So apparently one was bad. But when they did that, they did a whole bunch of rewiring, and that's part of the reason why I'm having a problem. So now that I have all this ancillary stuff done, I could really get into the meat and potatoes of getting under the chassis and cleaning that up. So I do apologize for the delay, but there's a reason. That's why we're here, right? We're here to fix this thing and get it working. On this speaker, just to wrap this up, this next thing I do is clean it and fix it, right? There's a hole right here, which I've showed you. I think you've seen that before. There it is. And I also discovered there's a little tear right here. So we're going to have to be really careful with this thing and really, you know, clean it, fix it, make sure it works properly, and go from there. And that's about it. So, you know, I'll probably just end the video here, because the rest of the work on this thing right now is going to be just tracing the schematic back, and there's really nothing interesting about that. I'd rather take the time, do that, and then come back to you after I fix it and explain what I found. Okay, so there's no sense to prolong this video. So all of the ancillary things are done, and we will come back in episode number 12. I lost track. We'll come back in episode 12, and we'll report our findings on the bottom of the chassis. Okay? So that's going to be a wrap for today. Hope you learned something, right? Especially about these connectors. All right, everybody. Take care. There is one more thing I forgot. So I showed you that Star City website with the Clarostat part numbers the other day. And I discovered something, and one of our good subscriber, Robert Gibbons, also found it. The volume pot on this thing is indeed 5K. It's not 50K. The tone control is 50K. It took me a while to understand the symbols they were using to denote tone and volume. But at the moment, the volume control on this thing is correct at 5K, and the tone is 50K. That's the correct part numbers, that's the correct values, and that's what we're going to stick with. So that's going to be part of my discovery underneath the chassis. But now I understand how to use that manual, okay? If any of you want a copy of the manual, just leave me it in the comments and leave your email address, and I'll figure out a way to get it over to you. It is pretty much an invaluable tool, because it's really hard to find parts for these things. So if you need it, just let me know. All right, so that's the admission, and thank you to Robert Gibbons for also being my second pair of eyes on that. Okay, folks, have a great night.